This is Emily Blackshear with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is Wednesday, October 27th, 2021, and we're in Oklahoma City. This morning I'm interviewing Mariana Llanos for the Deep Roots Oklahoma Authors Oral History Project. Mariana, you're an award-winning children's book author, and you also write for adults. You've been recognized widely for your literary work and activism. It's such a pleasure to interview you today.
Thank you, Emily. Yes, I'm happy to be talking to you.
Yeah. So let's start by learning a little bit about you and your background. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Lima, Peru, and I grew up in a small town in the outskirts of Lima, just about 30 minutes from the busy, hectic life of the capital. So this town called, the name was Chaclacayo. Well, it still is Chaclacayo.
Oh, how do you spell that?
Chaclacayo. Chaclacayo. So it's
it
is a long name. So it was just like a magical place right there, close to Lima, surrounded by mountains, and we had the river kind of cutting through the town, the Rimac River, and that is actually called the Talking River because it sounds so loud that you can hear it talk. And it was just a smaller town with a lot of really nice people who are very oriented to arts and to nature. So it was a good place to grow up.
What were some of your favorite things to do there for fun growing up?
Well, this is a while ago. So since there weren't any phones or video games, because I probably would have been hooked on to that if I had them, I did watch a lot of TV. So TV was one of my favorite things to do. I loved watching movies and TV, but I also loved exploring my backyard. We had a large backyard, and with a lot of trees, and we had a part of the mountain where there were some terraces. So it was fun to explore there, the different things to do, and I would just play a lot with my imagination. So I had toys, but not in the amounts that we have nowadays. So so with a few toys, I was able to create different worlds and different kind of plays. Sometimes I would play that I was a biologist. So I was going to be a biologist, and then some other times I was a Smurf and would collect berries in the backyard. And it was just a lot of imagination, active imagination.
Did you have siblings?
Yes, I have an older sister.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and it would be very different from us. I don't remember I'm sure we did, but I don't remember us playing it together too much because she was always like, I don't know, like 8 going on 13, and I was always younger, so I was always like, maybe I was, I don't know, 8 years old, but I would look like a 6-year-old. So so our interests kind of grew apart from a younger age. I mean, we loved each other, but we just were interested in different things. And she would always hang out with a little bit older people. She was more mature, and I was not so mature. So so it was a different. And I was more of an introvert too. So that made a difference. So yeah, so I was always reading and kind of nourishing that inside world.
How about your parents? Were they in the arts, or what did they do?
Both of my parents are journalists.
Okay.
So there was a lot of reading and a lot of discussions about politics and yes, and a lot about visual arts. Yes, because my father he was a cameraman too, so he would make his own documentaries, and he would also did camera, and he loved music, so he would always hear really good music, and that's one of the memories I have of him with his music. He had that a case, like a bag with a lot of cassette tapes. So, and they were all very organized, because he was very organized with his music, and he would hear really, really good music. So we grew up hearing nice music, classical music, some Peruvian music, and some other kind of music that would also nourish my imagination and our imagination. My sister was into music; she's a singer, so I think she got that from my dad. And my mom was always reading, so there were books everywhere. Yes, and the conversations at the table were very interesting. Discussing books or discussing current events, politic events, or or anything that was going on in the country. So yeah, that was a little bit of the background with the parents.
Were you close to your grandparents?
Yes. Yeah, well, not on my dad's side, because I think my grandma, they were dead when I was born. But on my mom's side, I was close to my grandfather, but mainly to my grandmother. We called her Lali. And we, all the grandchildren, were very close to her. She was a very, very strong figure for us, a very strong influence. And all Mother's Day were at her house, all Christmases at her house, New Year's, everything was at her house, her birthday. So and that's the time when I would get really close to my cousins. We were very, very close, and still to this day I love saying that we are very close, our extended family, right? But it felt like a nuclear family. And my grandma, she was just an amazing grandma. She would take care of us, and she would, she would read to us. And I remember she loved reading poems to me. She loved poetry. And when she was young, her family had like a little theater in her house. So she and her siblings would perform for their parents, like rhymes and things that were kind of like from older times, right? Some little plays, or they would sing. And that's something that she always talked about, that how they had their little theater, how they did their performances when they were little. And that was something that marked her from early on. And that's something that I always wanted to do, so I kind of wished I had more siblings so we could put some sort of theater performance together. It was only me and my sister, so it was and we lived in Chaclacayo, which was far from my grandma's house. But whenever I went to see her, those stories filled my mind, all about her childhood and growing up.
Yeah, well, that's great. So you've talked a little bit about kind of your early experiences with writing and creating things. Can we talk a little bit more about that? You have a little book of poems here that I'd like you to tell us about.
Yes, well, I started writing very young. I remember when I turned 8 years old, my mom gave me a plant as a birthday present. It was I don't know how to say it in English, but a violeta africana, the African violet, probably that's how it's called too. Okay, yes, so una violeta africana, she gave me the plant. That was my present. And my dad gave me an agenda, but it was a leather agenda, and you would open it, and it was a blank notepad with a fancy pen. And for me, that was the best present ever. And I bet you that someone gave that agenda to my dad and he gave it to me. So it would look like something like a corporate gift. But he gave it to me, and it was like the most precious present ever. So I think I was already writing, but in little papers and stuff. So I started focusing my writing on that notebook, and I started writing short poems, really small rhymes or short stories. And I couldn't always finish them, so I would get the idea, the characters, and start them, and then I would just leave them in the middle because I couldn't finish them. I didn't know how to finish them. But I did write a lot of poetry, and when I was 10 years old, my mom got a few of my poems, and she made this little booklet. So she had an artist make this illustration, and she printed some of my poems here, and we printed several copies of this. It's a nice paper, so she made it, kind of look nice, and we gave them to all my friends and to my family and my so even to this day, I think there are a few copies that survive. But this is something that made me feel like an author, So I saw my name there, and I was, wow. So I'm a writer. I'm an author. I'm a poet. So I felt really good about it.
Yeah, and with two parents that are journalists too. Did you have other writers in the family?
Well, I think so. Yes, I think it runs very strong in the family. My grandmother's father, so my great great grandfather, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So he was a poet. He was a lawyer, but he loved writing, and he was a poet. So I think I take a lot after him, even though I never met him. But his family published him a book when he was older of his poems and his verses. So, and I've read it, and I think I take a lot after him. And I always thought that my literary vein came from my mom's side. But also, then thinking, my dad, he wrote really well for his documentaries. It was a little bit different, not as academic as my mother, but because my dad was self-made. So he learned on his own everything. But he wrote really well with a lot of emotion. And also, I've learned through the years, actually not long ago after my dad died, I learned that his father was really good at writing or at making stories and telling to all the people, his nephews and nieces, and he was known as a kind of like storyteller, and I never knew that. So I was like, so I guess it comes from both sides in my case.
Yeah, a real lineage for
storytelling. Yes, for storytelling and just
blood.
writing and just loving words.
Yeah. So when you were little, did you dream of becoming an author? You mentioned biologists, playing outside, but did you, is that what you wanted to?
I think I always wanted to see my name on the cover of a book. So that was very kind of like vain thing, but I remember reading some stories and how do they do it? How do they have their names on the cover of the book? So I loved my favorite authors so much that I wanted to be like them. But on the other hand, as I grew, I was always good at writing. That was something that I was at school. I knew that I was going to get a 100 on my report when I wrote something because I always, I wrote well. And for the 5th grade, I was asked to write the final speech. So the principal asked me to write a speech for the class. So I did. So, but I kind of took it for granted. So at that time, I didn't think, okay, I want to be a writer. So I didn't know what to do. So I kind of took writing for granted, like it was there. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking, okay, I'm going to be an author. So I'm going to work towards being an author. That wasn't in my thinking yet, even though writing was a big part of my life. Yeah, you know how teenagers are. Sometimes you don't think, right? That, you don't give value to what you have. So, for me, it was, okay, well, I write, but I want to do something else. But it was later that I realized, okay, but I'm a writer. I should be writing more.
And being an author, that you just don't fill out an application and become one. I mean, that takes some grit and work and maybe even some luck.
You don't go to college to be an author. Really, yes, you can study writing or English or creative writing. You can, but there's not one career. I mean, you can be a doctor and be a writer and author. You can be, if you don't go to college, I mean, you can still be an author. But I still think that going to college helps immensely. But, but still, you can, it's a creative path that you follow and kind of like a decision that you make.
Yeah. So after high school, what did you do education-wise? You went to theater?
Yes. After high school, I went to theater school. Well, not right after. Kind of at the beginning, I was a little bit like I didn't know what to do with myself because I wanted to do too many things. And like I said, I always knew that I liked writing, but it wasn't in my list of careers. Okay, I'm going to be an author. So I was like, okay, I don't know what I want to do. But I knew I loved the arts. That's what I knew. It had to be something creative. So I wanted to be a cinematographer. I wanted to make movies. I wanted to do theater. I wanted to, to do anything that was creative. And I decided to go with theater. So I studied theater in Peru. And it was like a really rich experience for me because I met beautiful people, so theater people are usually, they become friends for life. So, the connections are very deep. And and it helped me later on in life with everything else that I've done. So I really never became an actress, right? But it's always been there, that theater background.
Yeah, and so the school, CuatroTablas.
Yes, yes,
We were talking
CuatroTablas.
before here about
Yes. First I went
speaking
to
other
the
languages and
right.
practicing. So
Yes.
there we go.
CuatroTablas. You got it right.
Okay.
Yes. So at first I went to another one that it was la Universidad el TUC, le dicen, el Teatro de la Universidad Católica. I went there first, but I guess it wasn't for me. They were very strict, and you know, so at the end I ended up going to CuatroTablas, and I also studied marketing. So because my mom wanted me to have something a little bit more practical. But theater, you know, the careers in the arts are tough, are very tough actually. You know, so you think, okay, being a doctor is tough, being a I don't know, in the science stuff, yes, it is, but it's also being in the arts because it takes also a lot of resilience from your part because it's there's so much competition and it is tough. It is just tough. Sometimes it's not appreciated either. So, and so I did marketing and then I did also theater at the same time. So yeah.
And after you finished with school there, what did you do?
Well, when I finished with school, I began working, and that was the time when I moved to the United States.
Oh, okay.
So I got married there, and then I moved to the United States. So I really never got the opportunity to work there as what I wanted to do. Yeah. And I think I'm a late bloomer too. You know what you call a late bloomer. I didn't know what I wanted to do. You know, so I knew I wanted art, but I never knew what I wanted to do. So yeah, so I mean, everybody tells you when you are 15, 14, what do you want to be? What do you want to be? And they kind of push you, and sometimes you don't know, right? And you just need some time to develop your talents and your creativity. So for me, it was that. It was I was a late bloomer. So I moved to the United States with my husband, and then we had our children here, and that's when I took again on writing seriously. And then this time I said, okay, this is what I want to do.
So did you move to the States in 2002 or just locate to Oklahoma? Or was it both?
Yeah, well, no, to the States and to Oklahoma in 2002.
Oh, okay, so what brought you to Oklahoma?
Who knows?
So curious.
Who knows? Yes, I'm still here, so there's something. Well, I guess it was Oklahoma is a nice place to raise a family, and it's not as expensive. Obviously, it was the economy, I think, what brought us to Oklahoma, so it wasn't expensive. And my husband had a job here, so and we thought we would be here only for a couple of years.
Oh,
and almost 20 years later, we are here still. But this is home already. So yeah.
So tell me more about how you started to find yourself as a creative. So you're here, you're in another country, you've already studied English and were fluent. So did you find adjusting to life here and the culture here? What was that experience like?
Well, it was. I mean, I can't say it was horrible because there are people who have it worse than me. At least I came with the language, which helped a lot. But it was, definitely, there's a cultural shock that you don't see at that moment until many years later when you look back and then you realize, wow. Yeah. So, there was a cultural shock there, So, because you kind of start, because you want to assimilate. So you start losing a part of yourself too. So it's either like you don't assimilate at all. And, there are some people who live here as if they lived in their countries. I mean, they eat the same and they do everything the same. And there's some other people who assimilate so much that they forget their heritage. So for me, it was a little bit of both worlds. And I didn't want to lose myself, but I ended up doing it, I think, for a few years. For me to get better at English, I turned off all Spanish. So I just turned off the TV. I mean, I didn't read in Spanish. I didn't, anything. So it helped me, but it kind of hurt my children because they, I talked to them in Spanish, but they didn't grow up. They grew up with a foot in both worlds, but not as fluent in Spanish as they probably should have been. And they understand Spanish perfectly, but to speak in Spanish is probably a little bit harder for them.
Yeah, like a native speaker. That's
exactly.
That's a harder.
Yes, it's not their first language. So so it was their first language when they were at home, but once they started school, forget it, by Spanish. So they would just speak in English all the time. So, but for me, it was a little bit of that. I needed to reinforce my English. I wanted to speak better, to learn better. It's true. I learned in Peru. I went to school 3 years there,
Mm-hmm.
and for English. But when I moved here, people talked differently. And the
Mm-hmm.
first job I had was at a truck stop, and there were people with different accents from all over the country,
Mm-hmm.
and it was terrible. It was like what? Because
Yeah.
my accent and their accent, and so it was, I was like, okay, yeah, it was a little bit tough, and yeah, so it took a while for, I guess, for me to kind of find my balance and who I wanted to be. And also, when you are new immigrants, you are focused on working and working and working because that's why you came here. You didn't come here to become a children's author. Right? You come here to work and to build um, wealth for your family.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't bring generational wealth with you. So you have to settle and put your roots here, and so that was a tough part. But there was a moment when I realized that I wanted more, that I didn't want to lose myself completely, in this in the immigrant experience. And I was probably like I don't know, one of those existential moments that people have, and then I was like, okay, what do I want for me? What do I want? I think I already had my second child, and I thought, okay, how do I want my kids to remember me one day? What do I want them to think of me? I was working at a preschool at the moment, and I loved it. I loved my work there, and but I knew I wanted a little bit more. And then I remembered that I was a writer because I hadn't been writing since since before I moved to, actually since I married. I hadn't written anything, I think. Because you kind of change, you marry, and then you were going to live, so
there was motherhood.
Yes, and motherhood without family or anyone to tell you what to do, right? So it was tough. I mean, I didn't know how to cook when I got here. I grew up in Peru, kind of like with a lot of help around me, and so when I came here, all of a sudden I was, okay, what do I do? I knew how to boil water, and I knew how to fry an egg. That was basically it. So I would call home every day, like, okay, so how do you do this or how do you do that? So I've learned everything over the phone. And yes, and I didn't know anything about motherhood because I didn't have younger siblings, or I never took care of any younger people. So I had to learn everything from scratch. And that was an experience, So not everybody has that same experience, but I did. For me, that part was a little bit tough because I didn't know what to do. And so then I had to kind of find myself in all that because I kind of had getting lost a little bit. So I had to remember, okay, I used to be a writer. Why don't I write anymore? And then I remember I loved books, and when I looked around my house, there were maybe a couple of books. There were some of my son had books. Obviously, I always bought books for him, but not my books, my reading. I used to love my books. I had my shelf in my bedroom in Peru with my books. And I mean, they were mine. If you touched them, you had to tell me and you had to return them to their place. I loved my books. And they were like friends. And I didn't have books anymore. So that was something that was so different. And I realized, okay, I'm losing myself. I'm not myself anymore. So I decided to go back to I went to the library and got me books, and I went to bookstore and got me a couple of books that I wanted to read again, or new books. So I started nourishing that part of myself again. And then I realized I wasn't reading in Spanish either. So I bought me some books in Spanish, which is difficult actually to find, especially many years ago here in Oklahoma you wouldn't find many books in Spanish. But so and I started reading my son's books as well, and finding the words and everything so magical. And when he was learning how to read, my oldest was learning how to read, and we were running out of space for his books because he had so many. And so I said, okay, every day you come back from school, I'm going to have a little rhyme here on this notebook. for use to read. So something new every day, because I couldn't buy any more books, and I couldn't, I didn't have space. So so I would write little rhymes, little things for him to read in Spanish or some in English. And so that was part of the process too, remembering how I used to write, and then when I was little, I used to write these poems. And so everything started coming back to me. So all this creative side of me that had been kind of sleeping for a while, and then I remember I would write the little rhymes for him, and then one day. My son was playing outside, and he was running around the yard. He looked like a wild child. And all of a sudden I had an idea, so kind of like a phrase popped in my head in that moment. And I was like, oh, okay. And I went to my computer and I wrote like a mad person that day. So I finished a story in one day, and it was horrible. Okay. It was horrible, but I loved it because I knew, I had the story, the structure was really well, but it wasn't, it wasn't polished. It takes a lot of time. Yes, especially it was in English. So, my second language. So, so I was like a little bit, okay, but I really liked it. And so I printed it and showed it to a friend of mine, and who is from here. And I was actually doing babysitting for her at the time. And I remember I showed it to her, and she read it, and she told me, I didn't know you wrote. And I said, yes, well, I forgot, but yes, I write. And she said, this is so beautiful. I bet my children would love to read this. So when she said that, I realized that I write children's stories. I never knew I wrote children's stories, but that was like, that's a children's stories. Yes, a story. So, I was like, because I always thought that I wrote short stories. That was it, for anybody, young kids, adults, whoever. But I never thought of my stories as children's stories, like a genre. So that was a moment I said, oh, this is a children's story. Okay, so I write children's stories. And, so I started polishing that story and working on it, and I worked many times, and that became my first book, actually. So,
So that was Tristan Wolfe,
That was
right?
Tristan Wolfe, yes, yes. And then after that, I really haven't stopped,
That was 2013.
Yes, that was 2013.
And then, you published.
Yeah, but when I wrote it was probably 2010.
Okay.
Yes, maybe even a little bit before that. So it was around that time. It took me a long time to bring it to a place where I was happy with it, and to publish it too, because I decided to self-publish at that moment. I researched about self-publishing and traditional publishing. So I had no idea what to do. I remember when I knew I wanted to publish that story, I went on Facebook and asked, who knows an editor or someone, to publish my story, So, and obviously no one really answered, right? Who knows? I don't know anyone. So I didn't know how it worked, but I'm very good at research, So I, so I went on, right? Yeah. So I went on Google and I started researching, and I found out, there's self-publishing, there's traditional publishing, and what the difference between those two. I joined it wasn't the CBW. The Oklahoma Writers Federation. I joined that, so kind of gain more knowledge and information. So I informed myself, and I decided to go the self-publishing route, because I knew still that my stories, my voice wasn't still going to be in the mainstream. So, it was something that would tell me, okay, this is probably not going to be too much for the traditional market. And I didn't know how to write query letters and all the formalities that writers have to do.
The business of it, all those activities you have to do.
Yes.
A lot.
And it's a lot. And so for me, the creative part was hard enough in another language, right? So that to do the formal stuff. So I was okay, I'm just going to self-publish this. So I did the self-publishing part, and then I self-published my first 9 books. It was a learning curve, definitely. So, yes, and then I started doing traditional publishing. So I decided to look also, okay, we'll try the other way.
And illustration and art was part of, your books and the experience, and they're beautiful.
Yes.
Tell me about that, because that's kind of another level of collaboration that, not all authors
no,
experience. It's
no,
very
no,
unique.
no.
I think
It is very unique, and it's something that you learn to you learn to deal with it too differently. So well, for Tristan Wolf, of course, at the beginning I was lost. I was just trying to see some advice on the internet how to do it. So I interviewed one person for the job, and because I wanted to know how much they would charge me for the illustrations. And when you self-publish, you pay up the illustrator up front. So I needed to have some money for that. And well, this person went and interviewed with me, but then he never get back at me, So I was super devastated because I thought, okay, that was the end of the world. But then I thought of a friend of mine who's Peruvian, is an immigrant like me, and we made friends here. We were really good friends, and she's an artist. So I thought of her to illustrate the book. So she illustrated my first 2 books. And then after that, I started collaborating with other illustrators because just stories have different feelings and, different styles. At that moment, I was already studying the books from the library, the books that were traditionally published, to see how they were done and the style and, the fonts and how they manage the illustrations. So kind of trying to learn from the industry. And I was also a member of the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators, which has a lot of resources. So I was learning a little bit more, as I grew as a writer, and but when you're a self-publisher, you're also the publisher. So you have to learn the other sides of business, like how to deal with illustrators, and so I really liked what I liked doing with my illustrators was not to give them too much directions, because I realized that me as a writer, I see the story in a whole different way than the illustrator. They are visual for a reason. So, and they bring a different perspective, a different angle. They see things that you as a writer do not see. So I like that collaboration. So I didn't give them a lot of direction, just basics of, well, obviously the setting and whatever, some particular things that I wanted to be incorporated, but that was basically it, and let him come up with a sketch first, and to see if we had the same ideas. Now, when I went into traditional publishing, I don't pick my illustrators, right? So all the illustrators for my 3 books that have been traditionally published were picked by the publisher, and I am happy with the 3 of them. So I think they did a really good job. They're professionals. But you always see how they bring a whole different aspect that you didn't even think of, and they enrich the story, because in picture books especially, the work of the illustrator is half and the words are the other half, so they have to complement each other.
Do you have much contact with the illustrator when it's a okay, so you're just writing your part and you don't know?
You write first. The text is done first, always. Like, it's always done first, and then after that they pair you with an illustrator. And in some cases, with my first book with Lucas Bridge, the illustrator was Ana Lopez Real, but we had an illustrator before her, so that at the end she didn't finish the work. I don't know what happened, but they changed illustrator in the middle of the project. So I was happy with Anna too. So and she did an amazing job, and I did get in touch with her a little bit more. And with the other illustrators for my other books, no. With the one for Eunice and Kate, I don't think we've ever actually talked at all. So it's weird. We've never talked at all. I mean, I love her illustrations, but we've never talked. And with Mariana Ruiz Johnson from the Run Little Chasky, we have talked after the. Yes,
you want to.
Oh yes.
So they're so beautiful, and I think like we were saying how the artwork just sets the.
It says kind of the mood. Yes, absolutely.
Especially this one, which. Tell me a little bit about Lucas Bridge.
Well, Luca is a story about immigration. It's a story about deportation.
Yeah.
So
quite emotional.
It is very emotional. Yes, it took a lot of tears to write. So it was very emotional for me to write as well. And so when then they ask you to revise your story, and then you're no, I'm gonna cry more. I don't want to. But it took a lot of tears to write this book, and it had to have an illustrator who would capture the mood of this story, because they have moments. This is a family who is being deported, so we start right from the bat. That they're being deported, and the child who is an American citizen, he feels like why should he go if he's an American citizen, right? So so there's a lot of of emotion here, and I think she captured it beautifully. She had really the illustrations are super touchy, and it had to be this way. So yes, I really love her, all the colors that she used, the palette that she used, and how she was able to capture these emotions. So that's something I could never be able to do if I illustrated my own books. But so, and also I think it went well with the language, because the language in that book is very poetic. It's more lyric. So I think the illustrations complemented it very well. Now with Eunice and Kate, and this is Elena Napoli, and she's the one I've never talked to her. I would love to. But,
that's very really different though. A very different,
totally different style.
This one,
and the story is a different. It's a different story too. So this is two girls who are best friends who are the same, and until the day they discover they're not the same, because one wants to be an astronaut, the other one wants to be a ballet dancer. So what do an astronaut and a ballet dancer have in common? So they have to work on that, accepting each other's differences. But I love the tones that she used, and because it is vibrant, but at the same time, I don't know, it looks peaceful, right? And very childlike, like a child would be drawn to this world of these two girls. I just love the characters so much. They're very expressive. So I really love the work that they do. And then for this one in Run Little Chasqui, I mean, she just blew it out of the park, basically. She's Mariana Ruiz Johnson. We never spoke in the process of the book, but the communication were through my editor. So whenever after the manuscript was done, it was sent to the illustrator, and whenever she would send a draft or anything, the editor would send it to me and ask me, okay, what are your notes? What are your comments? And you can say anything you want, because since this has a cultural background, it's set in Peru, times of the Incas, they wanted it to be really accurate. Well, as accurate as you could get it. It's 500 years ago. I don't know. I wasn't alive then, so wouldn't know exactly. But but I had done my research too, and the illustrator did too. So so they would consult me all the step of the illustrations. So the first time she sent me the rough drafts, I was stunned, because I had not pictured the illustrations like this. I had pictured something more classic, more traditional. Right? And so when I saw it, and then I realized, okay, well, this is way better than what I had in mind, because a child would be drawn to open this book, not the thing that I had thought in my head, obviously, right? So she captured, I think, that the playfulness and the colors, and making it vibrant and exciting.
All the different patterns just within it that will catch them.
Yes, no, it's very rich. When you look at it, it's very rich. There are different patterns here, even this is a condor. And she explained to me later when I asked her once, and she said that she makes these patterns by hand first, the textures by hand, and then she makes a digital collage with this. So so I'm like, oh, okay. So I just loved what she did here. And
that's beautiful.
And I think it's because illustrators, when they're professional illustrators, they know what they're doing. So and so she knew how to capture, I think, the essence of the book, because the text is very dynamic. It's a read aloud. It's run little chasqui, powai. And so she made that. She brings that energy into the book. So I was super happy to be paired with all these three people. They're wonderful.
Yeah. So when you did get into traditional publishing, were editors or agents looking for you, or did you write the query letters? And
I did. When I first started with Lucas Bridge, that was my first traditional published book, and when I wrote this story is when I really began thinking about traditional publishing. And the reason is that it's, like I said, a story about immigration, deportation, and it was right in the political eye at that moment. And I didn't want to be alone. writing that. So I said, okay, I have a really good story and I don't want to take on the haters. Thank you. Right. So I wanted backup there. So I began querying for this book. I didn't know much what I was doing. I am not good at writing query letters. And I've come to learn that it doesn't really matter. What matters is your story, so the query letter, there's a format, kind of the formalities, but it's not going to break your chances at publishing, really.
Yeah.
If, what is going to break your chances are if the story is not done correctly, right? So, or if they're not interested. So I queried several publishers, and I got a lot of rejections. And actually, one day I went to my mailbox and I got a rejection letter, and I was like, oh my goodness, maybe I should another rejection letter. There are usually letters that tell you, thank you very much for sending us your story, but it's not for us. Some will tell you, okay, it was a really good story, we really liked it, but it's not for our catalog. Or some others will tell you just a couple of things, nothing much, So,
right. There's different degrees of detail with the rejection. So there's good rejection.
Exactly. There the rejections are soft. The ones that tell you, hey, this is really nice, I really love it, but it's not for our catalog, which is understandable because publishing is a business. Right. They do have a line that they have in mind what kind of books they want to get out on 2023. So they, they have that line. And and there are other rejections where they just send you a generic, no thank you. And there are other rejections that are understood, because they never answer. They just don't tell you anything. So usually the query is, dear editor, my book, Lucas Bridge, is a picture book of this many words, and it's about this and this and that. So I made it really short and concise. And well, so this day I went to my mailbox and I found a letter of rejection. And I remember because I was sitting on that couch over there, and I was like, oh my goodness, so maybe I should self-publish it. Maybe I should just go ahead and do it myself. I don't know. And then a couple of hours later, I get a phone call, and it was Chad Reynolds from Penny Candy Books. And he asked me if Lucas Bridge was still available. And I said, let me go and look at it. I was like, I put it in mute. What? Right? Yes, I have it available. Right? So, so then we signed contract not long after it. And Penny Candy Books was a kind of newer imprint at the moment. They were launching a catalog with a lot of titles with social justice themes and the environment and issues about society. So it was a perfect fit for this story. And so sometimes it's the fit. You have to fit what the publisher wants. So we worked on the story. I got some edits from them, and we worked it together. And then it got published again. So it got published. And then I also queried them, Eunice and Kate, and it got accepted. I queried a couple more, but they didn't want. But they wanted this one, Eunice and Kate. And when I was in the middle of negotiations for Eunice and Kate, is when I got my agent, my first agent. So I got her on because a friend of mine. Well, at this time I had critique groups and I had friends, in the writing business. And one of my friends, she had an agent. And she told me, this agent is half Peruvian. Her father is from Peru. And she told me that she would love to represent a Peruvian author. Why don't you query her? And I wasn't interested in having an agent. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think I want an agent, because I can publish, I can also submit myself. But the thing is, if you want to publish in bigger publishing houses, they do require agents. So the mid-size or smaller presses don't necessarily require an agent. So but I wasn't sold into the idea of having an agent. So I was like, maybe, I don't know. And then I followed this agent on Twitter, and I saw she posted a call for, said, I would love to represent a Peruvian author. And I was still, I don't know, no, maybe, I don't know. I wasn't sold into that idea. I don't know why. And until I wrote, at that time I was working on this, on Run Little Chasqui, Corre Pequeño Chasqui. And then I thought, okay, maybe for this one I would like to get an agent. I don't know. So I sent her an email. No, I talked to my friend and she gave me her email, her agent email. Said, you just send her an email. So it wasn't even a query letter, like a formal query letter. It was just, hi, I'm Mariana, I'm Colleen's friend, and I'm a writer. I have 2 books published. I'm looking for an agent. Maybe if you are interested, if you want to see my work. And she responded almost immediately. She said, yes, send me your manuscripts. So I sent her this one. I sent her a couple more manuscripts, and we signed, I think, a week later. So she was my first agent. Now, sadly, she quit. We sold this book, and we published this book, and then she quit for her personal reasons. She quit agenting, but I signed with another agent in her agency. Her name is Sarah Rivers, and she's representing me right now with some other stories that hopefully, fingers crossed, are going to be sold very soon. But yeah, it's a roller coaster with this publishing world.
What a journey. And
it is.
I think, I know there's a lot of interest in publishing for children, and it's very competitive.
It's very competitive.
It's so hard to get in. But what I'm hearing so far, for anyone listening who might want to get into this, well, first of all, you had to believe in yourself and what you were doing. And then you also just immersed yourself in the writing community. I think we were talking a little bit before we began recording that when you're a writer and you want to be a professional with it, just the connections that you make.
Yes.
This is
networking is
business,
key. Networking is key in this business. I really love the children's publishing community because it's very generous. It's very, very generous. It's not like other industries where you go and there's a lot of jealousy and, might be jealousy, I mean, we're humans, but but in general, it's very generous. So we support each other. There's like an unspoken code, right? That, I mean, you helped me, I helped someone else. So there's this chain that is truly unique and it's genuine. It's true, it's not something fake. So I really love the community of children's writing for children. So if you're true to what you want to do, if you're putting the work in, someone is going to help you. But obviously, you have to put a lot of work into it, right? So going to conferences and networking with other people and working on the craft, working on writing, and but especially having a thick skin and being able to take advice, to take criticism, and to implement those critics. That you're going to have some criticism in your work, some critiques, and being able to implement that and to change your manuscript and being flexible. I don't think it works very well for people who think, okay, I'm the best writer in the world and I wrote this, and go ahead, publish it. No, that's not how it's gonna go. It's always, publishing is full of twists and turns, and
it humbles you.
It humbles you even if you don't want it. It humbles you definitely. So okay, well, I'm such a great writer. Then you can't sell manuscript for so many years. Okay, well, and it's not about the craft. It's because it's a business. It's a market too. So sometimes you can write the best manuscript in the world, but there might not be a place for it right at that moment. So it takes patience and takes resilience, and takes a lot of resilience, because those rejections, it's hard not to take them personal. Even though everybody tells you don't take it personally, and but their person is your work, and your work is part of yourself. So it takes a lot of self-motivation. So you have to be a self-motivated person. I know people who are uber talented. I mean, they're great writers, and they've just quit it. Because they can't with this, rejection and all that.
It's talent.
Talent is like this. Yes. Talent actually is at 10%, I would say. The rest is work, and it's persistence. You have to be persistent, and you have to be there. You have to want it really bad. So and of course, it's not just, okay, I want it, someone give it to me. No, you have to sit down and do that work, and work for the community, I would say, and that's how I got involved with Latinx Pitch,
I was going to tell me about that. That sounds great.
Yes, it's something that we co-founded, me and a group of other author friends. We are all Latinos from different countries, and we began talking how there's not enough representation of Latino culture in children's literature. I think the Center for the Book does a report every year with the percentages of books published by different from different ethnicities, right? So and I think, well, Latino population accounts for 25% of, I think, the population of this country, and there are only like 5.6% of books are written by Latino authors, and so we realized that that's something that we want to change. And what got us motivated was there was an interview with an agent, and when this agent was talking about her client's work, she said a phrase that kind of stuck with a group of us, and it was, "There are not enough Latinx writers." And we're like, "Hello, we are. Hi, we're here," right? Yeah. So I remember I was upset. I was like, "Okay, no, there are enough," So, and I went on Twitter and I asked, "Okay," I said, "Well, so are we not here?" And people started responding and say, "Hello, yes, I'm so and so from Colombia, and I write this and that and that." And all of a sudden, there were so many people replying to that tweet, just saying where they were from and what they wrote. And so say, "Yes, we are here." So the problem is not that there weren't enough Latino writers or Latinx writers. The problem is that we weren't being seen.
Yeah.
And right. So we got together with these friends of mine and we decided to change that, So we want to be seen too. We have stories. Not all stories are cultural stories. Some stories are just kids being kids. But we are here, and having that Latino perspective to, bring it is not going to affect anything on the country. It's going to enrich our literature. So we founded Latinx Page, that is basically a Twitter event to connect publishers and agents with Latino creators. Can be writers or illustrators. And our goal is to increase representation of, creators in the industry. But in the long run, our goal is that all children are going to see themselves in books.
And that's so important.
It is.
And you've spent a lot of time in schools, or maybe it's been with the pandemic. You visited.
I visited
over
a lot of schools.
Yes,
I visited a lot of schools.
So let's talk about the kids and how they react, because I think it's really special to see a child interact with a piece of literature, and for that child to see themselves in it, especially if they hadn't before. So tell me how do kids respond, or what kind of questions do you I get the two sides, right? Because I get the child who is from a Latino family, and then they see the author who comes to their classroom and talks with the same accent as their parents or their aunts, and I make a lot of grammar mistakes when I speak, and the kids are like, "Wow, that's my aunt Luchita speaking," so that's fun for them to see, that it's not an impediment, to come to another country, to have an accent, to speak, to have English as your second language, to not only be an author, but to be whatever you want to be in the end, because not all children are going to grow up to be authors, but there are no impediments. The impediments are in your head. And there are some real impediments in life, obviously, but for this, you can have an accent, you can be an immigrant, you can be new in a place, and you can still try to go ahead and push those boundaries. And there's also the other side that I see that for me is really important. It's for kids who have not been exposed to a person of color, or a person with an accent, or a person who is an immigrant, and they have stereotypes in their heads. We all have stereotypes. There's nothing wrong with that, but we need to shatter them, right? So, so for me, it's important to get into their classrooms and speak with my accent that they may not have heard from an author. And, and they are, I think, for them, it's opening a new door, because not everyone can travel.
No.
So that's another, I think, really important thing about books, especially early on, just those influences and what you see, because that kind of forms, I think.
Yeah, I think it forms
children
in your
start to view the world and what's possible or what's not possible.
And what's not possible too, of course. Yes. Or trying to see themselves and seeing, okay, maybe I can be, an American-born child and I can grow up in Germany and I can have a career as an author too. Or I can do what I want, if I kind of set my mind to it and I have, the right conditions. So, so it's very important for me to be shattering stereotypes in that way, for ourselves and for others. Because sometimes also when you are in a minority community, you grow up thinking, okay, there are things that I can't do because those are not for me. Yeah. And I don't want kids thinking that, So for me, my work visiting schools is very important, and I've done it since almost the beginning of my writing, and visiting schools first it was on Skype. So I went to lots of schools, and I did a lot of overseas visits too. I visited Pakistan, India. I mean, I would wake up at 5 a.m. to do visits. In Australia, it was usually at 5 p.m. So it would be their morning. And it was, it was super fun. Ireland, I don't know, where else have I gone? Well, Argentina, and there were so many places. It was even, I think I've done, not China, but I think it was Taiwan when I visited. And I mean, it was fantastic. And right now I'm doing more visits in the United States. And so I visit schools, I don't know, in Illinois, in Missouri, everywhere. And I love it. And I also travel in person. I really love doing the visits in person. I rather than the Zoom thing, because I'm already kind of a bit.
Kids are tired.
Yes, kids are tired. I am tired too.
Fatigue.
Yes, but it works. Because it's I really love talking to them. So every time I'm on the camera with the kids, I take that opportunity to let them to ask me questions and answer their questions, and just have an interaction with them. I think it's super important that the kids have an interaction with a person that is not their parents or their immediate circle, but someone who is going to tell them, hey, that was a good question, thank you, so that just gives you, that little thing can give you so much confidence. And I love visiting in person as well. So whenever they take me, so I'll go, I'll pack my bags and I'll go. I love visiting schools.
Is there a place you haven't visited yet that you'd love to?
Well, I would love to go to a school visit in California, actually, because I've been to California, but not to a school visit yet. So I would really love to go to California for a school visit. The Latino community is so big there, so I think it will be, it will be super fun. Yes, so
to discuss, and then I've talked to other authors in this project who were undocumented and have written about that experience.
Yes, no,
well, and that person was from a different. Latina, but
I think telling the kids your experience so they can also mirror their own, or realize, okay, well, I'm not alone, my experience.
Some empathy, I think that empathy and understanding, and not attacking people.
Yes, exactly, especially nowadays,
really
it's so important. Yes, it's so important to foster that from really young age. I would really love to visit more in South America. I've only visited one school in Peru. I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, and I tell people, my friends but I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, maybe one day. So I would really love to visit more my country. Well, there's a saying in Spanish that is, nadie es profeta en su propia tierra. Like, no one is a prophet in their own land, right? So I guess that's why they don't invite me. But maybe one day, who knows?
Everyone else,
right?
Whole world.
Right. But not my country. I don't know. But maybe one day. It's strange.
So when you reflect on just your career so far as an author, and just maybe also what you've learned about yourself as a writer, what do you think? So what do you think I guess this is really two questions I'm throwing at you at once, but what do you think your body of work so far represents? We'll do that one first.
Well, my body of work so far represents just the beginning, basically.
Yeah.
I'm just getting started.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
I'm just getting started. I have a lot of more stories that are, and I feel like I'm growing and learning. And that's why I love being an author. It's not like, I mean, you can't be a doctor and be learning on the job because you would kill someone, right?
Right.
But as an author, you grow every moment. You learn, you change. It's like Picasso. He had his blue period, right? And I kind of have right now in my Peruvian period. So I'm writing a lot of Peru. So, I have my different periods and I can change and I can learn more and I can change genres. Right now I'm writing middle grade that I usually write picture books or poetry. And but now I'm trying to change genres too. So there's no limit to what you can learn, and I like that I keep on learning. And I learn from the children that I visit, and society changes too. So you have to adapt. So I love that component. So yeah, my body of work right now makes me proud, but it's just the beginning. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yes. So as far as working on your craft, do you take classes, or is it more just reading and practicing and interacting with a peer group, like a writing group?
Well, it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
It's both actually. So I do take classes. Whenever there are some classes on, I sign up for everything that I can because it can be costly too. Classes cost money, obviously.
Right.
So I try to do a little bit of both, but I also learn from my friends. I learn from my friends, and when we critique and we work on the craft, because the only way to learn how to write is by writing. So there's no other way. I mean, I can think about writing, but no, I have to write. So that's how I learn. And also books, right? So books about craft, those I use less. I used to use them more before. Now it's less because I don't like people to tell me how to write, so I'm at the point that I'm very creative, so I kind of have my own method of putting my stories into motion. And I use a lot of my theater background for my stories. And I do a lot of dialogue, and I act my story sometimes when I'm at home and I'm alone. And so that's the moment where I'm creating my story. So it looks like a crazy person lives here because she's got
Romeo the dog.
Yeah, my dog.
You gotta have our pets. So they're
right. Yes, obviously.
A good audience.
Exactly. He never claps though, but he wags his tail. He wags his tail. But I do a lot of especially, for example, with the stories that are emotional, more deep emotional, like in Lucas Bridge. I did a lot of talking to myself because I needed to get it out. So I do a lot of things. I've also done with some of my stories when I'm stuck, and this is like a writing exercise. I'm stuck in some scene that I don't know what to do. I kind of act it out to see what are the actions that would go with that moment. If if I'm yelling at someone, what would I do? Throw my arms out.
I love that. It kind of goes beyond the whole, are you an outliner or there's all of that. It kind of transcends.
Yes, a little bit of your own technique, right? I mean, whatever works for you, I think is what's what is good at writing. And about being an outliner or a pantser, I am a pantser totally with my creative work, my work that I'm going to do for trade. But I'm also writing for educational publishing. And I have several books with educational publishers, and I'm writing some books for curriculum too. And you cannot be a pantser with that. You have to outline because you have to follow certain guidelines, and also they kind of see your work as it's progressing. So you have to tell them what is the outline. And at the beginning, I hated it because I felt like it limited my creativity. But you learn to work with it, so you learn to work with it, and it's just different writing. But it's still creative. It's still, I can still write about almost whatever I want. But it's different. You have to use the lexile, words and not words, but lexile count to make sure that the books are at a certain level. So if you're writing for the third grade, you have to be within a certain range, and so there are ways to measure that. So there are many different things, and then you work with editors that tell you if the story is if this is going to work or not, because there are things that they don't like to incorporate in their curriculum, or I don't know. So it's different, but I enjoy it. I really like writing for schools too.
Yeah, it's kind of a change of pace. So what's a good writing day look like for you? Do you have like a certain time or ritual or?
Yeah, well, usually it's when I'm, in the mornings when my children are at school, so I can have more, like I said, I like talking to myself a lot, and I pace and I eat a lot, so I kind of munch on things when I'm writing, so I pace, so I have to be alone. If someone is there, Mom, can I? I mean, I can't, like, ooh. Yeah. But whenever I'm in a really writing, in the writing role, I don't mind whoever is next to me. I'm going to be tick, 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 on my computer. And but usually it's in the mornings during the day that I'm going to be writing, and I sit down on my computer, but I never work on one project at a time. I always have to jump on two projects because I think it gives my brain a little break, right? So I'm gonna get too sick of something, so I'm gonna revise that poem I wrote a little bit ago, and then I go back to the story, so I kind of jump in between.
So you're always working and making progress.
Yes,
but not feeling stuck.
No, exactly that. And also because the publishing world moves so slowly, and you have to wait so much for an answer, that it gives you that sense of, okay, I'm doing something. I'm not just there with nothing happening, so I'm doing something. So you are working on more stories. So that's what I try to do, at least to keep my sanity.
Because that can.
Yeah. Oh no, it works. It
really hard.
Your anxiety, yes.
Yeah. So what inspires you?
Well, I'm inspired by a little bit of nature. I think nature inspires me a lot, especially for my poetry, and also social issues, things that are happening around the world that that just make my blood boil sometimes. And sometimes I feel despair. And ever since I was a kid, I think I wanted to change the world. Like my parents, they were journalists. I saw a lot of bad news. And when I was growing up, there was terrorism in Peru. So there were a lot of news about a car bomb here or explosion there and killings, and I couldn't understand why people were so mad at each other. And also the wars going around in the world. And I remember I would go to the TV channel where my mom worked, and they had these screens with all the channels. They had CNN, and I don't remember the other channels. They had from monitors from all from different stations around the world. And most of them showed violence, and it was something that made an impression on me. So I think I wanted to, from that moment I thought, that I wanted to change that, so I wanted peace, I wanted, I don't know, something. So when I rediscovered my writing, that's what I wanted to do. That's what I realized. That was my superpower. That's how I could change the world. So that inspires me, the idea that I can plant a seed on people's, especially young people's minds, and work toward peace and empathy and understanding, understanding cultures, just building those bridges. So that inspires me a lot.
That's beautiful. So
thank you.
What advice do you have for aspiring writers?
Well,
we've talked a lot about a lot of things, but if we had to sum it up, like your really good piece of advice.
Well, depends on the kind of writer. Okay, if it's children, so I mean, if you're a child and you want to be a writer, I tell you, okay, you have to write. There's no other way to be a writer if you don't write. So the main thing is to have a journal by your side and a pencil or a pen by your side all the times, because ideas are slippery and you are not going to remember what the idea that you had. Also read, because reading is a university for writing. Right. So you go to college by reading. Really, so you need to be reading a lot of books. Yes, and all the time, and getting new ideas. Books inspire you. They keep your vocabulary, always ample and vast, and they just give you idea. Books gives you ideas, and also to save your writing, because sometimes when we're kids, we write in a piece of paper and then all of a sudden it's somewhere and it's in the trash. So save your writing. Maybe one day when you're older, you're gonna dig through your things and then you're gonna find that awesome story you wrote, and then you're gonna work on that when you're older. So yeah, it's never too early to start to become a writer. It's never too early to become a writer. You know how to write, you can write the story. And then for grown-ups who are writers who want to begin writing, I tell them the same word, write. I get so many people who come to me and say, oh, well, I have an idea for a book. Well, don't give it to me, because ideas are not books and they're not copyrightable, actually. So, so don't give your ideas to other people. Ideas are not books, So if you want to write a book, then you need to do it. You need to start doing the work. No one is going to do it for you, unless you hire a ghostwriter, I guess. But but that's a whole another thing. So no one's going to write a book for you, but the book that you want, you have to write it. So and also to join your writing community wherever you live. There's always a group of writers, because there's a lot of crazy people like myself, who love writing, so they're all over the world. So join them, talk to them, and find your people. Find your people. It's very important.
They'll find each other.
Yes, we'll find each other. That's right.
Stick it out.
Yes. And it's so necessary, because there are some things that you need to talk that no one will understand. I mean, I can talk to my husband about many things, but not about my writing, because he will never in a million years understand the excitement I feel when, I don't know, when really well-known author retweeted my tweet about my book, and I was, wow, so excited. And then, okay. So no one is going to understand those little things that are going to give you fuel every day to keep on creating. So you have to surround yourself with creative people. And then also, especially women and women from minorities. I mean, don't let anyone tell you that you can't. That's not something
that was my next question.
Exactly.
What encouragement would you give to writers who are immigrants or who are just being told, no, you can't do that?
Right. Well, the obstacles are in our heads, basically. So to get rid of those obstacles, if other people can do it, we can do it. We can do it too.
Yeah.
And there are no reasons not to write if that's what you want to do.
Right.
And you can. All the excuses are in our head, really. So the language. Okay, then write in your first language. So if you don't write in English, okay, well, write in Spanish or whatever your language is. So there are no, that can be translated later. So there are no reasons for you not to write. All the obstacles and excuses are in your head, and also find your people, because there are many of us who are willing to give out a hand, to lend out a hand, to push you and to help you. And also for writers, especially nowadays, I think it's rich to dig into our cultural heritage and to present it and to bring it and to share it. And so nowadays it's opening a little bit more towards that, slowly but opening, so that's something that I think we as people who are not from this country, that we're just putting roots in this country, can bring to the table, can bring a different perspective, can bring a little bit more culture, can bring, just something adding to this, tapestry of beautiful cultures and colors in this country. So yeah.
So what are you working on now?
Well,
what projects?
I have several projects that are breaking my heart right now, because I'm like, I want to sell them, but it's a little bit, selling is a little bit tough. But I'm working. I have 2 chapter books that hopefully will be out in the world. They're out on submission, and one is about a Peruvian vampire. So it's it's super fun and it's funny. So I think kids are really gonna love this character, and she's a vampire who moved from Lima to Sunny City, California. So so there's a little bit of that, and then I have another chapter book that is about a girl and her. She lost her father to cancer. So there's more a little bit more emotional side, but it also has fun parts, and there's a lot of imagination and funny things. And then I'm working on several picture books. A few of them are based on a lot of Peruvian culture. I'm writing about Machu Picchu and writing about traditions from Peru that I want more people to get to know. So I'm investigating a lot and writing a lot. So that's what keeps me grounded. Really writing.
Full and rich.
Yes, it definitely.
Creativity.
Yes, and when you nourish that side of you, if you're a creative person, and this goes probably with the advice for people who want to write, who feel that bug inside. When you nourish that side, I mean, you don't even have to publish. I mean, you don't have to be a published author, but when you nourish that part, it reflects on the other sides of your life, because you're more happy. You're better with your family. You are more connected to the world. So for me, it's important to go outside on nature walks and see the birds fly and and touch the trees and feel textures, and that connects me to where I am right now. So so I don't let that stress about life and money and and everything else, take me again, to that side where you lose yourself.
Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about today?
Oh, well, I wanted to talk to you about poetry too, because, I am also a poet, and but I've always been very self-conscious, even though, of course, I was a published poet by the end of the day, but I've always been self-conscious. And this is one of the examples what networking helps you. Because I do write my poetry most of the time in Spanish. It comes a little bit easier for me in Spanish, but I write some in English. And because of my networking for this many years, helping other authors and other authors helping me too, I was invited to submit to Poetry Magazine from the Poetry Foundation, which is one of the most prestigious, right? Yeah. So, and then they accepted my work, and yes, in that one actually. Yeah. So then here I have.
Did you want to read?
Sure. Or? Yeah, I can read one.
Yeah, that's amazing. But congratulations.
Let me find. I know I was elated the moment they sent me email saying that they were going to publish my work. So here they published three of my poems. They're just short poems, and in a collection that is for young people. So this is the first young people's poetry issue from the from Poetry Magazine. I was reluctant to use the name poet because Mariana Llanos, children's books writer, and now I also put poet there because I don't know, it's silly, but I feel like they validated some of the things that I did. So anyway, so this poem is called Invisible Children. Yes, so invisible children fall through the cracks of the system like Alice in the rabbit hole. But these children won't find an eat me cake or a drink me bottle. They won't wake up on the lap of a loving sister. They'll open their eyes on the land of They'll open their eyes on the hand of a monster called negligence, who'll poke them with his sharp teeth and bait them with his heartless laughter, like a wild thing in a wild rumpus. But the children won't awake to the smell of warm supper, nor they find a purple crayon to draw an escape door or a window. Instead, they'll make a mirror on a murky puddle on the city street, which won't tell them they're beautiful, but it'll show their scars as invisible to others as these children are. So that was Invisible Children, and you can find it on Poetry Magazine website if you find my name, because you're probably gonna understand it better if you read it. But that was something that it was a moment when I really it was one of my goals. I've always loved the Poetry Magazine, and I would kind of dream, okay, maybe one day, who knows, I'll have a poem published there. So when it happened, I was
incredible.
I was blown away.
Getting into poetry, that's a whole other
it's a whole
thing. You just never know.
No. With poetry, you never know. Poetry is hard. Yeah, it's very hard to write as a second language.
Oh,
too,
yeah.
So even
I'm
worse.
just in awe. Yeah.
But it was it was a proud moment. So I wanted to share that because I think these are you can find these poems online for free. So you just go to Poetry Magazine website and then you type my name and then you're gonna see the poems there. And it just gives me a lot of hope. That a lot of other people like me who are poets but are sometimes don't feel confident that they are poets. Can also find their way to publication.
And do a variety of things too. There's just lots of possibility.
Exactly.
With the creative life.
All of that keeps you entertained. So it's not boring because you're always changing genres and it's flexible. So and you have to adapt and the work adapts to you too. So it's fun to keep on being able to create and to grow.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you so much. It was fun.
Yes.